Hello, everyone. I just wanted to give a little bit of a teaching today on the Alexander technique. The Alexander technique is 100-year-old, more than 100 years, more like 120-year-old method to become more aware of habits. And these are, I mean, we all have habits, but these are the kind of habits physically and emotionally that will affect the way that we use our bodies and the way that we interact with other people by creating that kind of, fight or flight tendency, which is like a stress pattern that's very much held in the body, created by an external stimulus, but taken so much into the body. And as we go along in our lives, what starts to happen is the movement and posture that we know as normal becomes habituated. And I think, there's a way to describe this actually through neuroplasticity of the brain. So the way I understand it is that neuroplasticity is our brain's ability to adapt quickly to new ideas or new pathways. But they also, the way that we do repeated behavior and repeated movement behavior is that it gets almost into like a rut, so that the brain is experiencing, where the person is experiencing what normal is based on a relatively recent aspect of our neuroplasticity. In other words, the original way that a child, a baby, starts to developmentally grow and move from that first lifting of the head to the creeping around to getting up on all fours and being able to look around, use the muscles of the back of the neck well, and propel themselves towards their desired end, whether that's food or a toy or whatever is drawing on their curiosity. It has to do with the ability to find an instinctual or a natural form of movement that is more difficult to rediscover as we get older. So today, I thought I would just kind of give you a visualization of what that development is like. And I'm going to actually move my my monitor so that you can see me over on the carpet over there. And hopefully you can hear me as well. So I'm going to just take off my boots. It's a rather cold day today. So we can crawl around. All right. So as a baby, the baby has figured out how to get onto their stomach first. If they're lying down in a bed, for example, they're often put down on the bed on their back. But they have to be able to do this activity to be able to manage the muscles in the back of the neck and to be able to look around. And you notice how much my arms are connected to that pattern. So they're looking, they're seeing, something that they want to go towards. And then they start to, kind of like an amphibian, get their knee up, and they start to pull themselves forward and pull themselves forward and pull themselves forward. So you've got this kind of crawling experience happening where they're moving with their arms and using the body in this very balanced movement way. And then they get to the point where they can actually keep that strength in the arms, and they come up onto all fours, and they're still available to look around. Okay, so they're seeing the world, they're being able to look around and crawl around. I won't go through that too much. And now, if you just tuck your toes under and come back, we're still using the hands, the arms. We're still kind of four-legged here in this movement. You're way down in the squat. I'll show you this way. You're way down in the squat, and the hands could easily come up off of the ground here. So what happens, and this is developmental movement as well, what happens is actually the hand is, and the thumbs are moving and stretching towards the ground. So you've got kind of a movability this way, and then the next step is just this beautiful ability to come upright. And you can see that you can come all the way upright and even onto your toes. So that's a full range of human movement, otherwise known as dance. Okay, now I'm going to bring my monitor back as I sit. So we brought up a kind of a number of different things, but developmentally, that's how the whole body orients in order to find its movability. So that kind of practice is something worth enjoying and doing. Quite, just play with it, have a good time with it. You might have noticed that my back, when I was in that deep squat, the back itself was the spine itself was pretty long. Sorry about my little skeleton's on his last leg. So he's all taped together, but it still gives you a nice sense of the body. So this is significant. The movement that's taking place in the knee and the hip joint, and that bendability. First, I had us come all the way into squatting and leaning forward, but then becoming bipedal and then just coming up on the feet. So you're really standing yourself on the feet. Now, the relationship that you have to the ground, to gravity, is that there's a kind of a force that goes downward through the bones of your skeleton and into the feet. And then you're really letting the ground be underneath you. And there's something that shoots back up through us. It's like the force of gravity that moves right back up through us and creates this kind of toned body, this kind of toned experience of the body. So that when you're in doing your normal movements, you're going to want to be able to maintain that free orientation of the back to the legs. And the way to do that, and this is something that I actually talk about a lot in the Alexander technique, has to do with continuing to orient your head in relationship to the whole spine. So we're looking for a poise, but a very particular poise. So there's a lot of freedom on the joint at the top of the neck. And it's called the atlanto-occipital joint, and it's a place of balance for the head. So if you were to kind of find that on your own, you could put your finger behind your ear and you'll feel a little jutting protuberance of the bone there. So, and you'll notice that muscles, actually the biggest muscle, sternocleidomastoid muscle, attaches up there. It's called the mastoid bone. And if you bring your mind's eye into, like, bring those 2 points together, you're going to be finding a pretty nice free head balance. So this is me nodding. I'm just doing the yes movement right now. And thinking about keeping a little space in that joint. Likewise, we can turn the head in lots of different directions, but the no movement, it's a little bit coming from a different place. It actually is moving from the second vertebrae. So the first vertebrae is actually going with the head, and the head is moving around, kind of swiveling around the neck. So that's valuable too. But now here is something that I wanted to speak directly about in relationship to gravity. So if you're standing here in gravity and you've got that ability of the head to find its balance, the center of gravity in the head is a little higher. So we pointed back here, but the center of gravity of the head is a little bit higher, and it's a little bit more forward from the balance of the head on the top of the spine. So when you think about your head, I want you to kind of project mentally into that forward and up location of where the center of gravity is. The reason why the gravity is slightly forward and higher is that there's more bony weight on the front of the head than on the back of the head. You can really see that if you drew kind of a line down here. It's a lot less, there's a lot less bone in the back than there is in the front. So that's why when we fall asleep in a chair, the head will tend to fall forward, it falls into the weight of the head. So what we're wishing for in studying the best way to use our bodies is that we want to maintain that poise. We want to maintain that poise as we look around, using our eyes, seeing the world, keeping a lot of freedom in the joint. We're not bearing down, and we're not pressing the skull down into the neck, but we're maintaining a little bit of freedom and length, especially in the back, where those muscles want to pull that head back and down. And then just think about projecting mentally into a slightly higher and more forward placement of where the head is. And you're going to find that your head really has a beautiful intentionality of going upwards in space, but also rotating slightly forwards, just like the nose dipping down just ever so slightly as you project the top of the head towards the ceiling or towards the sky if you're outside. And what that sets up is this, and I don't have the musculature here, but there's muscles on the back of the leg, the calf muscles, the hamstring muscles are up here. And then there's a lot of muscles right along the spine called the erector spina muscles, go all the way up into, and it's almost as though it puts the head and the back into a lengthening, widening orientation or tone or traction. Now, if you tried to make that happen, you'd mess it up. You'd make it much worse because you'd be pulling on yourself. And that's not what's actually happening. This orientation of the head to the top of the spine is taking place if we bring our conscious thought and awareness to it. It's taking place because we're maintaining that poise, because we're maintaining that intentionality. And then movement is simply going to be continuing that orientation. So if you didn't continue the orientation, the head would be probably doing something like that by the time you got into the chair, squeezing down on all of those vertebrae and making making a real mess of the spine. The other thing that happens is we kind of collapse down and shorten. I can show it better on myself, but we will tend to collapse and pull that front down, which then pulls the head back. So we've got this kind of downward, pressure right into the joints of the legs. And then we've also lost the orientation of the head. So we want to reorient the head as much as often as we can. But now, just this last thing that I wanted to say was that not only is the back lengthening because the spine is following the head, but it's also fanning out into width. So that's this broad, expanded powerful, strong back that you want to maintain. We don't want to bend at the waist because that weakens the joint at the waist. And we also don't want to pull the neck forward and move from the bottom of the neck. We really want the head to lead while the neck stays part of the spine. And then that really creates this beautiful movement, which we had as children, by the way. See, that's the movement of creeping around your living room looking for the toy. It's just the matter of coming up onto our bipedal balance that that challenges the system if you lose your orientation. So that's all I'm going to share with you today. I hope that was helpful and enjoyable. And I do recommend going on your stomach, pushing up, feeling that extension in the spine, starting to look around and see if you can bend a knee and start moving in that kind of amphibious way, which is crawling, and then come up onto all fours. And then come into squatting, bring your hands a little closer to the body, but feel that whole long spine and wide back. And then keep your orientation going of that head leading out away from the spine in that projection into the forward and up. And before you know it, you'll be standing and walking and coming up on tippy toes and dancing and having a great time. All right. Thank you very much. And I will be seeing you.